I don't know if you ever done anything audacious, and that's the topic of my talk. And I found it, you know, I'm pretty audacious in my mannerism. It's tough on my wife, my children, and a lot of friends. Maybe I'm not a good guy to really to live with, but anyway, audacity is a wonderful word, and the reason I ask you, have you ever had anything audacious, because it's one of the words that have two sets of meaning. You know, we can say you did something audacious, which could mean you're impotent, or it's very bad that you did what you did. But there's another element of audacity that has to do with some wonderful qualities of boldness, courage, daring, and fearlessness. And I think that we really need all those four qualities. But it's more than what I'm saying, more than what I really want to say, is that it's audacity that sometimes helps us to transcend the moment. I'm very aware of how we get into patterns of conformity. Well, I'm a third-generation Asian, and I find that what I experienced when I was very young is also experienced by a lot of Asians here. And that's when you come to a culture, especially a minority culture, which very much value success, you get into a relationship where there's a covenant that you hold with your parents. The covenant that I had was one of, we are your parents, and we're going to support you, pay for your education and everything else, but all you have to do is to succeed in order for us to feel proud. Well, what happened is, when I grew up, I was the obedient child, only boy, and that's a heavy, I want to tell you. And but then when I went to college, my world opened to me. In other words, I didn't want to be an engineer. They wanted me to do in science. I'll be in the medical field, or things, you know, things that are very acceptable. At least it wasn't a Jewish girl or anything involved, but I mean, at least it was contained. So I explored things that most people don't explore. I fell in love with Asian philosophy. I loved Tai Chi. I loved Taoism, shamanic art. I just love things that nobody just would read. I mean, my first book in high school was, I think, the autobiography of a yogi. And that inspired me. Well, what happened is, over the years in college, in reading, I discovered a completely new universe. Because if you understand Asian philosophy, the philosophy is very holistic. It sees the world in a web of connections, whereas we are really much more two-dimensional rather than three-dimensional. And I couldn't get any of that in school. When I reached my senior year, and I was in the science program, and I was supposed to take my last course in genetics. Well, I walked in, and I just stood there, and I turned around and walked out. I did the most audacious thing. I did not take my final exam, and I did not get my diploma. And I told that to my parents. I tell you, that was like taking a knife and going like this, and turning it. Matter of fact, even when I got married, that was one of the first stories that my parents would tell the person I was with. The disappointment of the year, you know, kind of thing, or the century. I just couldn't deal with the despair and the frustration. See, that's the other side of being audacious. You sometimes, whenever you try to do something unconventional, someone will not like it. And you learn that if you do anything audacious, you better be prepared to deal with the frustrations, the disappointment, and all that other stuff. Well, I couldn't. I mean, my parents that was their dream, and I couldn't. So anyway, I saved up money, and I worked during college, and I went overseas. And I went overseas for 2 years to find myself, to find my authenticity, because I felt that there was something in me that I need to find in order to find out who I was. because I was in a minority group. My friends were all Caucasians, I was Asian, and there was a sense that I didn't belong anywhere. So I did. And for 2 years, I went from India, Burma, and Japan, and Burma, and Thailand. And there, I searched for the teachers, because I wanted to know who I was. And I wanted to find out about meditation. Read all that stuff. I wanted the real thing. It was interesting because this journey also showed me what constitutes a teacher. There were teachers that had all the robes and they could, recite the Vedic literatures and all that stuff. But the real teachers, and I learned this, and I think this is very true of learning, is that the teachers never taught me any of the things. What they did was they brought it out of me. They brought the truth, my truth. They didn't give me the truth. They didn't tell me to believe in anything. Finally, I found this wonderful teacher, Ajanep, in Thailand. And she was an extraordinary woman. She was teaching the monks and the nuns, but she didn't wear a robe. I said, well, that's very interesting. You're the teacher. People respect you. Why aren't you, wearing the robes of a nun? He says, well, because we're focusing on self-discovery, and I'm not my robe. Why do I have to become that? And so, you sold me. She sold herself to me because I could see that there was an authenticity about her. And so we began a 2-year commitment. I decided to enter in a monastery, and it was wonderful because there was a group of nuns who took care of me, and I had sponsors and everything. So if you can imagine, didn't know anything about mindfulness, but it's at that time when I had to face my demons. I had to face all the things that I was attached to. I could hear all the shoulds, all the oughts, everything. And I felt like I was going through a detox program. Like taking all the oughts and shoulds and all things from your parents, just to come to a place of quietude. And that's what I really want to share, because no one ever talks about the richness of the human spirit. Because that's what I found. I found that in that quietude, and that took about 6 months, I will tell you, and through a lot of hallucinations and deprivation kinds of things, because I had a room, very simple room. They came, they fed me, didn't talk to anyone. I only talked to my teacher who had an interpreter. So, in that quietude, I found something very, very extraordinary. Because for the first time, as I became very aware of all that stuff about who I should be, what I should, the being, the doing, the having, and all those kinds of things, I discovered that there's also a state of being that's very, very different. And all of a sudden, I began to feel my body. It was almost as if I was in school and everything moved up to here. Everything was cognitive. Everything we talked about. All the concepts are all cognitive. But then all of a sudden, it's sort of like, because I had to become aware of myself, I became aware that that was shedding all the shoulds and oughts and whatever, to the point where I had a high sensitivity to what was going on and to that wonderful little space and that wonderful little room. But what I discovered was being in that room was a time where I found preciousness. And that is something that no one really talks about. Think about it, preciousness. I'm in that room, and I can be quiet. I could quiet my mind, and all of a sudden, the monastery was near the jungle. I could hear the whispers of the leaves and the birds and the light coming in through the curtain. And all of a sudden, I realized everything about significance is really right here. It's just that I didn't know it. And so I found out that it was not only preciousness, but that it was sort of like the whole process of being in a meditation program is that you feel like your whole mind is muddied with chatter. And then all of a sudden, something comes over, and this is like a clouding. And it's like all of a sudden, everything settles. And then what you discovered is an amazing mind that has a tremendous amount of depth. You know, you talk about technology. Well, what I saw when I came out, and during the time I was with different teachers, I saw yogis walking on coals, being able to manipulate matter with their mind. And all this has been studied in Harvard about how they have a control of their mind, how they can just change temperature, everything. And I found that, wow, we have that capacity and we don't even know it. But what is important, and this is what I think I really want to say, is that we find significance in technology. We find significance in how we quantify it when we quantify everything. We quantify it. It's like, how many cars do you have to have? How many dresses? How many, everything. It's all quantifiable. How many little, say, likes you put in your internet? How many people do you collect on Facebook? It's all quantifiable. So our sense of who we are is also always in terms of quantity. But then to have the quality come in, it's like opening the curtain. It's like letting the light in, and all of a sudden discovering that you are in connection with your world. And there are some amazing things when you're in that place, because you understand other elements that I believe that we have to bring into our lives. Because with the technology, if we do not bring the sensitivity of who we are as human beings, we're going to lose it. No one ever talked about cybercrime. You can talk about all the advancements, but boy, I'll tell you, the advancements are being used by cocaine sellers or everything for their benefit. So without the humanity and sense of connection, and what we need to do is really come back and bring that together and bring humanity into our life. And that's what I found, that when I was in that room, everything was precious. The meal that was given to me, I could sense the gracious and the love of the nuns, but I couldn't speak to them. It didn't matter. I felt their energy. And we don't have, and we do not take the time to really feel each other, connect with each other in a way that a sense of significance emerges. And when that takes priority over answering the telephone or letting technology use up our time, then we're going to be, like robots. And I saw that people were worried about, when there's robots, what am I going to do? What kind of job I'm going to have? Well, I'm going to be happy because in that space is also creativity and innovation. After 2 years, I came out, and my teacher said, it's time to go back. And I did. But I was a different person because I had a different platform of consciousness. And I found that it wasn't that I have to have more things because I lived a very simple life, but it was more that somehow the significance of the moment, in the moment, was the most important thing. And it was the most important thing because it was most remembered. Even now, I can actually go back and feel the nuns who took care of me. I could feel the love that they put in placing food and deliver food for a whole year. And when you really think about it, if everything disappears, where is the significance? It's in your relationship. It's when your heart is touched. It's when you understand your humanity and we are together. And when we are together and owning that humanity, we just come to a place of preciousness. And I think we need that. We need to add that to the technology. Otherwise, without that human element, we become impersonal, insignificant, irrelevant. So I went back, went home. My parents were very, very happy, but they couldn't let that go. They were still despaired of what I did because it was a time of the Vietnam War, and they were worried about me. But I had to say, no. I have people who, I'm part of a community, and I feel very, very safe. But anyway, I went home, took my last course, got my degree, and then I took a different turn, and I majored in psychology. And then all of a sudden, I found that everything I learned in the monastery had relevancy because I was working with dysfunctional children. I was working with people that had tremendous amount of pain, abandoned children and everything else, and I found that my education didn't do anything for me. I just couldn't give them little M&Ms, and I couldn't say good work and things like that. It just didn't work. But what did work, I said, well, maybe I could teach them meditation. So I got my hyperactive kids together. I found I could teach these kids meditation. Matter of fact, I rewarded them that. And not only that, most children, they have learning problems which are left brain. Learning disabilities are left brain. So I took them to the right brain. I took them to their imagination. I took them to being empathized with each other. And all of a sudden I said, my God, children can be healers of each other because that's the quality. Because they witness the pain of the other children. And we don't do that with each other. Do you know how powerful it is to be able to witness a person's essence, their beauty, or say, is to share your appreciation? It is tremendous. Those are the things we remember, not the things of what we have. So I discovered that the silence is a time not only for self-reflection, but allowing something to come, a connection without being interrupted by technology. And come and really learn that through that silence comes our humanity. But your significance lies in discovering your own humanity. And I wish that for you.